Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. So I wanted to create a video and I've created a blog post as well. And the two of these things should be sort of consumed together. Watch this video and also read the blog post. And the topic of today's video is really how to handle the question of where you will stay when you arrive in the USA, how you'll find accommodation, what sort of accommodation is out there, and the choices that you're going to need to make, right? Now, in this video, I'm going to assume that you know where you want to move, like geographically where you want to move. You've got some reason to move to a city or a state, and you simply now want to go through the mechanics of how do I get an apartment? Where do I stay on the first night I arrive? Where am I going to stay longer term? How do I get a lease? And those sort of questions, right? So I'm not trying to address the decision of where in the country you're going to go. I'm really talking about the mechanics, the simple mechanics of where you're going to sleep the first night and beyond. Okay, so let's talk about that. So for many of you, I mean, everybody's got different budgets, different situations. That's going to be different for everybody, different expectations, and that sort of thing. It's going to be different. I can tell you what I did. Let me perhaps start off by doing that, but let me just caveat this by saying that I was fairly well placed when I came to America. I had money in the bank. I had property. I owned homes I actually owned homes already in the United States. I could have gone pretty much anywhere. So the way I made decisions isn't necessarily the way that you would make decisions, but here's what I did. So we emigrated here in 2014, and when we came, we knew roughly where we wanted to be. I had a previous client that I'd worked at in an area, and I knew that I could probably get a job with that company, and if not, it was in the Silicon Valley area, and therefore there was plenty of work for me in that area. So I was already pretty clear where I wanted to be. I owned properties, and this is Silicon Valley in California. I owned some properties in Florida, and so that was another sort of easy option for me. I could have gone to Florida, and it was pretty easy for me to live there. But California was a better place for me to be, and so we knew where we wanted to be, but we didn't know exactly where we wanted to be. And we did some research from the UK before we came here, and we had some plans, and I knew roughly where I wanted to be within a sort of a 50-mile radius, but I didn't know precisely. So when we came here, we booked a hotel for the first few nights, and the hotel we booked was kind of a suite hotel. Suite meaning it had additional space. There were three of us. My daughter at the time was 6, I think. So it was myself, my wife, and my daughter, and we needed a sort of suite hotel which had a couple of beds in it, a couple of large beds, and then it had a sitting area and a small kitchen area, as well as the private bathroom, of course. And so it was a hotel, but it was a fairly spacious hotel room. It was completely open plan. Didn't have a separate room for my daughter Sophia. It was all in one room, and the sitting area is in one room. So it wasn't like an apartment, let's say, but it was pretty comfortable, and we knew that we could be there for a couple of weeks, no problem. So we did that. I booked up with the hotel to stay for a couple of weeks. And I knew during that time I was going to go and see some properties. We had some properties to go and see. I didn't have a job offer at this time. I was pretty sure I was going to get a job from the company that I had previously worked at as a contractor, but there was nothing guaranteed. So I was sort of sure that I was going to be in this area, but it took me that couple of weeks to try and move closer to the job offer, which once you secure the job, that means, you're going to need to commute to this town, and therefore you sort of start to narrow your focus on where you're going to be. So within that first couple of weeks, I had arranged to have interviews with the new management at the company that that I wanted to work at, and that was kind of like proof to me, or it was an important point to me to know that I wanted to work for this company, that I could get on with the new management, and that I was, that they would reward me appropriately and so on. I had worked for them as a contractor only before. I'd never been an employee of theirs. And so this was me approaching them saying, do you want me to be an employee of yours? That was a bit of a difference. And so that needed some working through. Within that first couple of weeks, I was able to get more confident that the company I wanted to work for was going to hire me. In the end, that process took about 6 or 7 weeks. So it took a long time to actually start work with them, because they went through all sorts of approvals and other interviews and that sort of thing. So I need, frankly, you should be aware that finding a job in the States is often like that. It can take weeks. The employment or hiring process is often not very fast, even when everybody knows that they want you and you want to work for them and you've agreed everything. It doesn't mean often that you start work the next day. So, when over that first couple of weeks, we were only sure that I was going to end up working for this company, and I knew therefore where I was going to be. But I didn't have a start date or an income from them or anything like that. But I had sufficient financial resources in my own, in my own bank account to not worry about the income side of things. So during that first couple of weeks, I then was able to look for a long-term lease, like a 12-month lease on a property, because I knew the area that I was going to be. I had the money, in order to pay a deposit, even though I didn't have a job. And so I was able to go and secure a lease. Oh, and I also had perfect credit history from the UK, which I was able to bring various proofs for. So I didn't have a credit history in the USA, of course, but I had a credit history from the country I was leaving, and I was able to print out the Experian reports and that sort of thing from the UK that showed my credit history. So I had substantial money in the bank, I had credit history, I knew where I wanted to be, right? And so therefore I was able to go and see some places and negotiate leases. I found it was easier to negotiate leases with private individuals than with companies. When you lease from a company, they often want a lot more in terms of credit history background. They want social security number, they want a credit history in the USA. They're working within certain parameters. The people you're speaking to are not the actual owners of the property, and therefore they are taking instructions on who they should or shouldn't rent to. I therefore used various tools and websites to find properties that were owned by private landlords. And with a private landlord, when you go to see the property, you can introduce yourself, you can demonstrate that you have the financial wherewithal, you can talk to them about your story of being a new immigrant and that sort of thing, and you can negotiate a little bit easier with someone that forms some trust in you. Okay, so it becomes that sort of conversation. It's a matter of, can you show that you are trustworthy, that you're going to pay the bills, that you're going to pay the lease, etc., and if necessary, offer to pay more in deposit. I think I actually did do that. I think I offered to pay 6 months rent in advance, but in the end, that wasn't necessary, I think. But I certainly paid. It's very normal here to pay your first month's rent in advance, a security deposit, and often the last month's rent in advance as well. So you effectively pay 3 months of rent up front, and then your next rent payment would be due a month after you move in. So that's pretty normal. You need to understand what that means. Well, in the area that I was moving to, the house we took, I think, was about $3,000 a month, $3,000 a month. So that meant that I had to come up with $9,000 to pay a month's rent in security deposit, a month rent up front, and the last month's rent, which is, they often say first month and last month's rent. I don't know why they term it like that, but that's basically what they're asking for. So I paid something like $9,000 up front, which again, it may not be in everybody's budget to be able to do that. So I'll come on to other options later on, as I go through this. But bear in mind that I was pretty sure that I was going to get a job that was going to pay me, well enough to support my cost of living, etc. Because I'd already contracted for this company before. So it was a slightly unusual situation, and also having, having that, that the amount of money I needed to be able to pay all these bills, etc., go buy a car the next day and all this sort of thing. All those things are fairly unusual. Not everybody's going to be in that position, but that's how I did it. Okay, so then let me explain and put that into a more normal way of thinking, a more normal situation. So the first thing you're going to need to do is figure out where you're going to sleep in the first night, in the first week, right? And for most people, that's going to be the most convenient option is going to be a hotel. It could be Airbnb, something like that, something that you can look for over the internet, and you have a plan that you're going to arrive at the airport at this time, and you're going to, you know how you're going to get to a hotel or a place which is expecting you, and you've got a place to stay the first night, and you're covered for at least the first few days, right? So just take, to make things stress-free, just imagine you're going to do that. Take a hotel, book a hotel room, and it's flexible. You can book it for 2 weeks, or you can, but if you need to, if you want to move after a week, you can do that. Or you can book it for a week and then you can extend it for another week. There's all sorts of flexibility. An Airbnb is a reasonable way to do things. I personally find Airbnb a bit expensive for what it is often. Often by the time you've added in the cleaning fees and the management fees and everything else, it's as expensive as a hotel. So, you have to weigh up, have a look at Airbnb, which is, on airbnb.com. Obviously, have a look at that. Have a look at hotels in the area that you want to be. Get prices. Always book something that is decent, right? I mean, there are plenty of really, really cheap hotels. Don't go to the cheapest hotel. Because often they're not going to be great places, and you're going to, be a new arrival in America. You had all these wonderful plans and ideas about, how you're going to live, and you find yourself living in some cockroach-infested, dump in the middle of a city or something, and you're just not going to be very happy. It's going to be a very scary and not very good experience, and not the best way to start your American journey, right? So just pay a little bit of money, a little bit more to get a clean place, a safe place in a decent area. Make sure you've got at least a room with a private bathroom. If you can afford it, get a suite, which is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a larger than average hotel room. Typically, it's got a little bit more space. Maybe it's got a sitting area and a small kitchen, and that's just nice that you don't have to eat out at every meal for the at the beginning. So if you've got a small kitchen, you can have some cereal there. You can make yourself some simple meals, which is a nice way to start out your American journey, right? So maybe get something like that, a small apartment or a suite, ideally, but something with flexibility where you don't have to provide any sort of credit history, credit check, or anything like that, and you'll pay for that sort of hotel, typically with a credit card. I go into a little bit more detail on my blog article about that. The other very good option is a thing called corporate housing or executive hotels. There are various executive hotels out there. I'm going to show you a couple of options. Let me present my screen here. Share screen. Let's share this one. Okay, so let me just let's make this bigger. Yeah, so this is fairly typical, a typical website of a company called Extended Stay America. So as you can see, they offer like a room with a dining area, a couple of chairs and that sort of thing. They have fully equipped kitchens in every suite. Some of them allow pets, some don't. It depends where you go. They have laundry rooms on site. That's kind of nice. They wouldn't normally have a laundry, like a washing machine and dryer, in your room, but they would have a room within the hotel building where they've got a washing machine and dryer, and that's useful. It's usually coin operated. You pay a little bit of money for that, but it's a convenient thing. Often they have gyms and or even a small swimming pool or something. They can be quite nice, right? They're hotels, but they're sort of little apartments, right? So you can go over and check out, extended stay, for example. This particular company is a brand that is available all over the country. Another option is to look at, for example, on the Marriott webpage, they have their types of hotels are sort of listed here. Marriott is a hotel chain, a brand name, but under that brand, they've got lots of other brands that are in the family, the Marriott family, right? And for longer stays, they have several brands which are actually quite decent. They have Homes and Villas, Residence Inn, Town Place Suites, and so on. And these are executive stay, corporate housing type options as well, right? So whatever you do, maybe consider one of these corporate housing type situations. With corporate housing or executive hotels, you book it like you book a hotel room. You don't have to get credit checks and that sort of thing. You can book them and you can stay for a few nights or you can stay for a few months. They're very flexible. They're fully furnished. They have Wi-Fi. They've got, when I say fully furnished, by the way, it means they've got a TV, they've got plates and cutlery, silverware to be able to sit and have a meal. They'll have a little kitchen in the room. You move in and you're set. You could be there for a few months and you could be there for a long time, no problem at all, and be perfectly comfortable. Sometimes they might have a little executive suite that's like a couple of rooms. It might have a door to a bedroom as well as the lounge. So it can be quite a decent opportunity for even a small family. So this is one way to do things. It's not the only way by any means, but you might want to consider that. I think it's a pretty good way to go. Okay. So we talked about short-term options, and the short-term options is a hotel, Airbnb, or maybe an executive stay. Longer term, beyond the first couple of weeks, you need to get into something that's a little bit longer term. An executive stay hotel could be corporate housing, that sort of thing. Could be an immediate and ongoing longer term thing. But a hotel and Airbnb will start to get expensive over a few weeks. And in fact, an Airbnb can even have restrictions where they won't let you stay longer than 30 days because that can bring on some challenges for them legally. You can get some sort of rights as a tenant. So the next thing that you're going to be looking at is renting, leasing a property, leasing an apartment, leasing a house, whatever you might be, whatever you might be set up for. And so the prices on these are going to vary all over the States. I don't want to go into pricing really, because in my area, it's going to be, one price, and in a different area, it's going to be a different price. So I'm not really talking about pricing. I'm just talking about types of deals and opportunities. So with a lease, you'll find that, just as I mentioned before, if you go to an apartment complex where some large corporation has built an apartment complex with 100 apartments or 200 apartments or whatever, and they run this apartment complex as a business, you're going to find that a company like that, although it's very nice, and those places often have, for example, a communal pool, they'll have a gym, they'll have on-site laundry options, and they rent out little apartments, which are, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments, whatever it might be, a larger, more spacious version of a hotel room, but where you're leasing it for a period of time, usually 12 months. But if you go to a large corporate or corporation-run apartment complex, they're almost certainly going to want credit checks and background checks and everything else. And so those could be fairly difficult for you to get straight away. So more likely scenario, more easy to arrange scenario is that you use websites like Craigslist. Let me just pull up Craigslist. SFB, Craigslist. Right, so I'm going to show you that. Let me put that back in. So, okay, so I've just brought up Craigslist for my area. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Now, Craigslist is, if you go to craigslist.org, it's a website that operates throughout the United States, but it's localized. So, so this is my particular area. This is SF Bay. I don't know why it thinks I'm in Stockton, California. That's not where I am. But anyway, in this area, you can see that there's a section on apartments and housing. And you'll find in there that there'll be opportunities where individual landlords have listed their properties for lease, and and they'll put in some sort of information, a few photos. So they'll show you photos of where the apartment is. I just picked something randomly here, but they're showing you what they've got. This particular one is a two-bedroom property. Oh, this is Stockton. I was going to say this is incredibly cheap, but this is not my area. This is a much cheaper area than where I live. So 2-bedroom for $1,965 a month, 1,160 square foot. I'd have to convert that into meters, but it's got quite a few facilities. It's got a little clubhouse. It's got a little pool, and then it shows you some design of what the apartments would look like. It's got 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. The second bathroom is quite small. It's got a master bathroom for the master bedroom, and a living dining room, and a kitchen, and then a little balcony. So that's perfectly adequate. You could be there quite happily. If you're a small family, a couple of kids, you could squeeze into that, right? A family of up to 4 people can squeeze into a 2-bedroom apartment quite happily and you would be there for the first year of being there. And let me just change this. This is nuts. Where's the Bay Area? What is this? SF Bay Area. There you go. That should be more like me. Okay, there we go. In my area, it's going to be very much the same, but the price is just going to be very different. So, and then if I go in like here, East Bay. So I'm in the East Bay, and this makes more sense. So this is Danville. Danville's near to me. And same sort of thing. I don't know what the pricing is here, but this is an apartment complex. Looks pretty nice. Got a kitchen, got a lounge, nice sitting area, communal sitting area. Looks nice, right? And $2,100 for a 1-bedroom. So that's a very small property, but it's only $2,100, which again is very cheap in my area. So you'll be able to find properties like this. Now, this particular one will be owned by a corporation that is an apartment complex, and therefore they will want credit checks and that sort of thing. So that might not be your best option. You'll probably be more looking for an individual apartment. It could be anything. I mean, a house, for example, like that, or a individual apartment. You just have to click through and read the terms of the advertisements to see who owns it, what their terms are. They might list in their credit check required or that sort of thing. You're not going to be able to provide a credit check normally when you've just arrived, right? So you don't have a credit history when you've arrived day one. You'll need to wait until you've got your social security number and build it some sort of credit history before you can actually show that to any prospective landlord. So that's going to be something you'll need to think about. So okay, so that's one way you can find apartments. Craigslist. You can also go through Facebook Marketplace. You can go through a website called Nextdoor. There are various options. to find these sort of places, right? And you can also tour around. Often, if you go to a new area, you'll go to restaurants and you'll see outside the restaurant there'll be a sort of a stand with magazines, and in that stand there's often a magazine called Apartments, or it sort of has a heading of apartments, and that's a fairly useful booklet to pick up. It shows you corporate housing and that sort of thing available in your area. But of course, the internet is probably the best way to find find information. Okay, so getting into a leased property for, let's say, 12 months, that may be your next logical step. You may prefer to be in corporate housing for a few months because that gives you more flexibility, and only choose to lease a place once you're sure that you've settled down in that area. So again, going back to my story, if I had not been able to secure a job with that company that I knew, or that I thought would want to hire me, I might have had to look in a different area, which would have changed where I wanted to be. So for me, the decision or the certainty of getting a job was a key factor in deciding where I was going to stay, and therefore, once I felt confident, I was going to lease in that area only once I felt confident about the job. And so therefore, if you don't have a job prospect sort of secured, you might want to stay in corporate housing, for example, to be more flexible, to have that flexibility for a period of time before you commit to a 12-month lease. Because when you're in a 12-month lease and you suddenly have a change of mind, you need to move to some other area, they are more than likely they're going to charge you some sort of penalty for breaking that lease to get out of that contract. It's a legal contract. So it's going to cost you some money, maybe a month's rent or maybe 2 months rent or something, to simply walk away from that apartment. So it could be costly. So even though an executive housing option might be a little bit more expensive per month than leasing a property, and even though a hotel is more expensive, the higher price options are, number one, easier to get into without credit checks and that sort of thing, but also more flexible. You can walk away from them with no downside, and move somewhere else. So it's a trade-off between the flexibility that is useful when you first arrived here, and paying a little bit more money, versus getting a cheaper lease deal for a longer period of time, but being committed to that period of time and to staying there. And so that's a trade-off you'll need to sort of balance, right? And then longer term, you can keep renting, you can keep leasing properties. By all means, you could do that for years and years and years. But I would say very, very strongly, and this is probably the most important advice I can give you, is you need to make a plan to be able to buy a property of your own, an apartment or a house or whatever else. You need to be able to get into that position. Home ownership is probably the biggest single factor that will make the difference in whether your life is a successful one in the USA or not. Home ownership provides you with some stability, provides you with equity, value, and once you start owning properties, you'll find your individual wealth will build much more rapidly than if you're simply renting a property month to month. Rent is making a landlord rich, right? I own properties to rent them out to people because those people are paying my bills, right? And so you want to be in a position where you're not paying rent to a landlord as quickly as possible. You want to be able to buy your own home. And so you need to make a plan, and you need to start thinking about how you get your finances together to be able to buy your own home within 2 to 3 years of arriving in the States. If you can do it faster, great. If you came here with a lot of money and you can do that faster, then that's great. Go ahead and do that. Obviously, the faster you can get your own home, the better. But if you didn't come here with a ton of money, you need to actually make a plan on, with the income that you find yourself earning, how much can you save each month to put towards a deposit to be able to then get a mortgage and buy a property of your own, buy a home of your own, right? That needs to be your plan. I can't stress that enough. So, so in a sense, that is the plan I want you to get to. So short term is about hotels and executive apartments, maybe Airbnb. Medium term might be about executive apartments stretching on for a while and then eventually moving into a lease. But really, after a couple of years of being here, you need to be in a situation where you're talking about buying your own home. That needs to be your reality, because that's going to make the biggest difference in your life. There are plenty of people in America, don't get me wrong, who don't own their own home, who continue to rent. But why be poor? Like, if you're coming to America, buying a home is the fastest path, in a sense, towards, for most people, it's the fastest path towards financial security that they can possibly have. And I'll do a video about that and why I'm so strongly in favor of that. But that's how I've lived my life, and it served me well. So I'm giving you the best advice I know how to give. That's the wisest thing. Now, if you're a billionaire and you choose not to own houses, good for you. But for most of us, buying property is the way that you'll become, comfortable, wealthy, secure financially. Okay. And that's something that, when you come from other countries, perhaps you don't realize that yet. Perhaps that's not a known thing to you, and it could 5 years could go by, and you suddenly realize that you're still paying rent every month, and you're wasting that money. You could be paying that towards a mortgage. And so, unless you understand how America works and how and that importance of buying your own home, you're probably going to waste time. So it needs to be in your plan from the very beginning. Okay, I'm going to lease here for a year or for 2 years, but after 2 years, maybe after 3 years, I should be buying a home. How am I going to do that? Now, make a plan. That's the goal. Make a plan and work backwards, right? From there, you'll need some cash deposit, for example. So you need to save up some cash. Maybe only 5% of the value of the property is your deposit. 20% is better, but 5% is okay. So, so you need to think, okay, homes in my area cost $500,000, let's say. In most areas, that would probably be about right. 5% of that is $25,000. I need to save $25,000 and a little bit more to be able to put a deposit down on a home of my own, right? That needs to be your plan. You need to literally work out those numbers and figure out how you're going to save that deposit, the $25,000, in the first 2 to 3 years. Okay. And if your income isn't enough to save that sort of money, go get another job, right? Do what you need to do in order to get yourself that plan, right? Don't make the plan. You should never plan based on on settling for what you've got. You should make your plan fit your goal, right? So have your goal and say, oh, it's difficult for me to save 25 grand, 30 grand. How am I going to save that money? I don't know. Well, okay, make a plan on how to do that. Do what you have to do, even working a second job or whatever else, to get yourself into that position. Okay. All right. So I hope that was all helpful. I'm gonna be putting this video into a blog page where I've got a little bit more information, and I've thought this through as being I want you to watch the video and watch the and read the article at the same time and sort of understand the details behind what I'm saying. So I've talked a little bit about those details, but by all means, ask me questions and ask them under that blog article, by the way. Don't ask them under YouTube, because it's difficult for me to track the questions on YouTube. So I'm going to put the link to the blog article under the video if you're watching this on YouTube. And, I want you to go over to my blog, watch the video there, and ask any questions on that blog article. And I'm happy to answer those sort of questions. And if I find I need to add information that I've left out, I'll add it to that blog article for your information as well, to help you through this process. So, okay, so that's it for today. I hope that was interesting to you. Please subscribe to my channel and make sure you're staying in touch. I'm hoping for those of you that already have your visa and you're just about to arrive in the States, I hope this video is well timed. For those of you that are going through your green card application process and you're about to arrive, or perhaps you're coming on another type of visa, hopefully this video was helpful to you, and I'll produce more videos about this about these sort of subjects in the future. How to buy a car, how to build a credit history, how to buy a home, all of those sort of things. Okay, so okay, thanks everybody. I hope that was interesting to you, and thanks for watching. All right, bye bye.